And good morning. I'm Dan DeRosa with 19 News, coming to you again from our digital desk. We're about to take you live to Akron, holding a safety update, a safety briefing, public safety address in Akron. Everything from gun violence to how to hold a safe public gathering. Just a lot of issues happening down in Akron. A couple of murders in the last couple of weeks. Let's take you live now to Akron.
We've also held the Rib, White, and Blue Festival, the Italian American Festival, and the city-sponsored Juneteenth event, as well as the rescheduled West Akron Parade, Kerr Park event, and the rescheduled Joy Park event, and our safety plans have worked extremely well. Later this week, we are hosting the Taste of Akron annual event at the Akron Arts Expo and the Akron Arts Expo at Hardesty Park. And in just 2 weeks, on Tuesday, August 6th, we will host the National Night Out in every ward across the city in partnership with the city, our fire department, and community organizers and city council. We're very proud of both the planning and execution of our safety plans, but there's always more that we can do to improve safety outcomes in our city. We've also seen plenty of private gatherings and family reunions and birthday parties and more. Since the June 2nd shooting, which shook our community, we've been working on guidelines to provide our residents to help ensure that everyone gathers together as safely as possible. Today, we are releasing some guidance to our community about how to safely gather. We want to share and review the City of Akron's policies regarding how to obtain permission to host a block party or community event. If you're interested in shutting down a street or having a larger gathering, this information can be found online on akronohio.gov under Departments, Recreation and Parks, and then by navigating to the events page. For block parties, you can visit akronohio.gov/block party. And for community events, you can visit akronohio.gov/community events. We'll get into some information about the distinction between block parties and community events. A block party is an event that closes the street and the neighborhood for a gathering with neighbors. All residents of properties fronting the street of a block party must agree, and the party must sign a petition before permission would be granted by the city. The city will check if all signatures are received, and if there are any missing signatures, it will delay the process. The application must be received and submitted to the city no later than 2 weeks prior to the date of the party. If it's received after that, it will not be approved. The application should include all signatures, the sponsors of the party, and a $40 check or money order made payable to the City of Akron. This fee helps cover the rental of barricades that the city will provide to block the street and the processing of that involved. If a party is expected to have more than 200 people in attendance, you must also fill out the permit application for a large party, which includes questions about parking, if items are being sold, and if alcohol will be served. Residents can mail the application or drop it off to the Recreation and Parks Division at the attention of the Community Events Coordinator at 220 South Balch Street. Block parties must end by midnight, and sponsors are responsible for cleanup immediately following the event. No alcohol may be consumed on public property, and intersections cannot be blocked off. Residents should also be mindful of their neighbors and keep noise to a minimum. This includes live music, which is prohibited after 10 p.m. Residents can also apply to host a community event. A community event differs from a block party in a few ways. While a block party is confined to a single city street and open to the entire neighborhood, a community event is open to the general public and is hosted on City of Akron property, such as a park. Examples of a community event would be the Hibernians' annual St. Patrick's Day Parade or the Akron Pride Festival. These are typically larger in scale than a block party and are oftentimes sponsored by an organization. Before filling out an application, you are encouraged to contact the city's event coordinator, Lori Shavini, to determine if the city location you want to utilize is available on the date that you're hoping for. Lori's info can be found on the event application. Residents also must fill out a community event application and return it to the city for processing and approval. An important note is that the community event applications must be submitted at least 60 days in advance because they are larger and require more time to process. Applications are reviewed by Akron Police, Akron Fire Department, the Department of Neighborhood Assistance, Recreation and Parks, and the Service Director's Office. These applications require additional information, including if you plan to have security at the event, if you are intending to hire Akron Police Department to provide security. Typically, events on city property require a site fee of $150, and which is due 30 days after the event. Depending on the nature of the event, the fee might be waived. All the events on city property are required to have a certificate of insurance as well. Any questions about city events can be directed to the city's community event coordinator. To ensure everyone's safety and prevent any issues from escalating, we ask that you contact the Akron Police Department if you encounter any concerns or disturbances during your gathering. We will be sharing this information later on today on social media so folks can share the information with their family and friends. The goal of this campaign is to help our community, make our community safe, help them make safe decisions, and mitigate risk of violence at large gatherings. At this time, I'd like to welcome Chief Harding to the podium to provide some additional updates to you all.
Good morning. I want to start by saying thank you to Sergeant Murphy, and also want to acknowledge the great work he and his team have done in preparing these recommendations for the community. We've been working hard to roll out these to our residents, while their team's also been attending dozens of community events throughout our community. And I want to say thank you personally for your dedication on that. I wanted to provide a very brief update on the events of the June 2nd shooting, which left 29 people injured, including one individual, Mr. Cook, who sadly passed away from his injuries. Since that time, our detectives have spent over 2,500 hours on this case. We've conducted in excess of 100 interviews, and we've collected dozens of pieces of evidence, of physical evidence for processing. But we've been working with a number of our federal partners, including the ATF, the FBI, as well as the Bureau of Criminal Investigation, the U.S. Marshals, and the Summit County Sheriff's Department to coordinate the activities around this case. We do have eyewitness statements at this point that we've spoken to that confirm the white SUV, which we previously disclosed with the photo, was the vehicle that initially started this shooting. They described that vehicle pulling up slowly, and the window going down, the male that was in the driver's seat then starts shooting. At that point, after that, the vehicle speeds off, and we have multiple other people that start shooting back, returning fire after that as part of the party. We continue to follow every lead. Currently, we have in excess of 85 leads we've received. We remain confident that we will find the person responsible for the beginning of this tragedy. My thoughts remain with all those who were impacted by this incident, and we are working hard to find those responsible and help ensure that incidents like these are less likely to occur moving forward. At this time, I'd like to welcome Tracy Carter to provide an update on the gun violence response plan.
Thank you, Chief Harding. Good morning. My name is Tracy Carter, and I serve as System Director of Government Relations and Health Policy for SUMA Health. And I am honored to serve as one of 3 advisory chairs for the Gun Violence Response Fund. Ron Padel with Huntington Bank and Pastor Charles Myrick of Arlington Church of God. All 3 of us are, again, honored to serve in this leadership capacity. On June 10th, the City of Akron, the Akron Community Foundation, and the Victim Assistance Program, Inc., announced the creation of a gun violence response fund to support the victims and families of the June 2nd shooting on Kelly Avenue. As of today, the fund has received $264,455 in pledges. Again, $264,455 in pledges. Victim Assistance has distributed $46,298 to those victims and their families as they continue to deal with the impact of that night. We continue to accept donations large and small. Any individual, foundation, or business that would like to support this effort, we ask that you please visit akroncf.org/gun violence response fund to donate. Again, visit akroncf.org/Gun Violence Response Fund to donate. Victims in need of support may call Victim Assistance Program 24 hours a day at 330-376-0040 to learn more. Additional outcomes of our Gun Violence Response Fund include confirmation of an advisory committee structure. So I want to thank Kim Boyd of Love Akron, Tamara Humbert of East Akron Neighborhood Development Corporation, Amy Wade and Kim Patton of Summit County ADM Board, Andrew Leask of United Way of Summit and Medina Counties, and Brett Trier Voorhees for being a part of our advisory committee structure. I also want to give special thanks to Leanne Graham of Victim Assistance Program, John Garofalo of the Akron Community Foundation, and Annette Pitt and Tony Ingram of the City of Akron for providing staff support to our committee planning process. I also want the community to know that to support our thought process, our planning process, we have compared notes with other cities who have been affected by mass shootings. So we've had an opportunity to talk to Dayton, Cleveland, and Orlando to get their feedback on how they responded to mass shooting incidents. We've also, the co-chairs, we've had an opportunity to speak to state leadership associated with the Crime Victims Composition Fund to learn more about the guidelines and the process through which victims are supported. And through that meeting, we were in a better position to understand how this local fund could be a benefit to those who are affected by gun violence. I also want to express sincere appreciation to the Akron-Canton Regional Food Bank. They have been an immense blessing to the victims. They provided food to make sure that they were nourished and well-fed as they moved through this traumatic situation. Again, thank you, Akron-Canton Food Bank, for stepping up and supporting with our relief efforts. Moving forward, our advisory committee will continue to fundraise. Again, any individual, foundation, or corporation, we invite you to donate. I invite you to make donations if you can by September 10th so we can have a better understanding of how much resources we have to support the June 2nd victims along with other gun violence victims and to ultimately help fund solutions to prevent gun violence in our community. So that's the update on our advisory committee and on the fund. And with that, I'd like to now turn the podium over to Mayor Malik. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you, Tracy. I also want to thank Chief Harding and Sergeant Murphy and the entire Akron Police Department team for their work on this case day in and day out, not just on this case, but on all public safety matters in the city of Akron. Our officers have been working countless hours this summer, maintaining safe events, answering calls for service, working to investigate cases. And I'm happy to announce that we are going to have more folks who are able to address our staffing challenges going forward. So, when we talk about our priorities, we talk about violence prevention, which we've touched on a little bit. We talk about community policing, which we've also touched on a little bit with our community events discussion. I want to talk a little bit about retention and recruitment because that is another significant priority of us. So currently we have an academy class that's being trained, 44 new officers who we anticipate will graduate on August 16th. Additionally, during the city's most recent recruitment cycle, we did something that we have never done before. We started accepting applications for lateral transfers. So lateral transfers are applicants who've already served as officers in other departments and who possess an Ohio Peace Officer certification. And so we were really excited about how this program turned out for our first time. We received 82 applicants during this recruitment cycle, and we are planning to offer a 7-week Fast Track Academy in the late fall for these lateral transfers to be able to quickly get folks out on the street and get them on the force. In addition, we will maintain an active list of lateral transfer applicants going forward, and we'll be able to have these smaller, shorter academy classes to help address staffing challenges throughout the year. Currently, we bring on a big class of new recruits, and then through the year we deplete that overall staffing as we have retirements and resignations, and then we have another big recruit class. This will allow us to hopefully have a little bit more consistent level of staffing throughout the year, especially addressing challenges in the summer months. We'll also bring our department into line with best practice nationwide and continue to grow and strengthen our recruitment and retention pipeline that we have. In addition to these laterals, I also wanted to share that we've received 688 applicants for first-time officers, and so we plan to host another full Academy cadet class in 2025, and those folks we hope will then graduate the Academy next summer and add to our numbers in our workforce. So I think with that, I just want to reflect on the whole set of announcements that we're sharing. Obviously, public safety is and will continue to be the top priority of this administration. All of the steps we've discussed today, from the recommendations around safe gatherings to the work our detectives are continuing to do, our efforts to support gun violence response victims, and our work around retention and recruitment, they are all components of that same goal. I want to thank everyone who's been involved. I particularly want to thank Victim Assistance Program and Leanne Graham, who's in the back here, for her work and for her whole team's work. I want to thank the co-chairs of the Gun Violence Response Fund for their work. And I want to thank Akron Community Foundation and United Way for being partners in that work. And I also thank Akron City Council for their work around community gatherings and also for their work around providing financial support to the Gun Violence Response Fund. And finally, I want to acknowledge all of the safety forces of the city of Akron, our police department and our fire department. And I want to thank all the staff of the city of Akron. So many folks have been working hard this summer to make sure that we pull off community events. Lori Chenevy, our community events coordinator, is right here in the front row. And we are all doing this work together. And so we're trying to bring our resources, our staffing, our capacity, our team behind this collective effort to ensure safety. So our aim is to keep our residents and the media updated on a regular basis. And so with that, we will open it up for questions.
Chief, I'd like to ask, first of all, I have a couple questions. From the June 2nd shooting, you said that there was return fire from the party attendees. Were any of the 20-plus victims, is there any way to know if any of the 20-plus victims were actually struck by projectiles from those shots?
That's going to be one of the challenges with the case is we can't identify which bullet struck which person. A lot of the injuries were graze wounds, and so that's going to make that a challenge. And that is one thing we're still investigating, but that is a challenge with this case.
And along those lines, then, well, hold that question.
I have one for the chief. On those bullet casings, are they linked to other crimes? You know, the signature marks on them.
Sure. The NIBIN results, we have at least two of the weapons have been linked to another case earlier in the year, not in our city, but in a different city.
Okay.
We
I'm holding that back. So.
Do we still think that this was a random? Do we think this was connected to people that were at the party at this point from the eyewitnesses you've talked to?
I wouldn't want to speculate. We're still looking at both sides of that, so I don't want to give information and end up being faulty later. So.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, Chief, what would you say is making this case particularly challenging to solve?
I think there's a lot of pieces from that. We are getting a lot of information, and we're getting a lot of leads. We're not getting a really great identity of the first person who started this case, which is probably the lead that we need the most, but we continue to work on that as well. So that's one of the big challenges with that. Also, the number of people shot, the number of people that were there also make this a challenge to determine what occurred.
Along those lines, there's been like a lot of chatter both in the community and on social media that there is an indication that you know who the first shooter might be, that you have leads but not enough to bring charges any real suspect or somebody in mind for any of the shooters? And if not, what do you tell people out there who say, what's taking so long? It's been 2 months and there's growing frustration.
If we were able to positively identify a shooter, we would have already made an arrest in this case. This case is extremely important to our entire community. If we had that information, we would have already moved on that. We've received lots of leads, some very similar. I know we're the same chatter. We continue to work together collaboratively and with the prosecutor's office on all those leads. But if we knew who it was, we'd be announcing an arrest. So we can't confirm that at this point.
Doug? Sorry. Go ahead, Doug.
This is kind of elaboration on the first question that was asked, but I'm wondering in the eyes of the law, is there a difference in potential charges for the initial shooter and then the people who responded?
Yes, there are. There absolutely are. There might be a felony murder case on the first person that started this. There may be some additional charges depending on who the shooter was. Were they allowed to carry a weapon? There are some, Ohio has some laws around, the ability to not have to retreat and some things like that. So there are some challenges prosecution-wise with a case like this.
So even if, say, the person who passed away was killed by return fire, the charge could still potentially go to the initial shooter?
It could. I don't want to get in. I mean, I think that'd probably be better served for the prosecutor's office who we're working closely with, but yes.
Actually, that was my follow, but for the community events that we talked about, if somebody reserves a city property, the state of Ohio does have concealed carry law now, and so an open carry. Is there any way to prevent people who are gathering for a community event from carrying weapons, firearms, into a community event?
Okay, I'll try to shoot that one. That's, for the most part, no. If it's an open gathering and an open event, open to everybody, then we routinely will not check. There are times that we can close those off, and like we have in other events where we've required people to come through and go through metal detectors and other ways that way. But most events are open, and that's just the laws of the state.
Clarification on the numbers. I know they keep changing, but on the 1 month anniversary, we were told 30, including the terrorist code. Is it now?
It's 29. It's 29 total.
Okay, and then on the issue that you talked about at the beginning of the news conference regarding block parties, the June 2nd shooting, would that have been considered a block party, and should there have been permits in place for that specific kind of gathering, or is that something different from what you're talking about?
I think that for that, what we're, we're folks who were congregating in the street, and so anytime there are folks in the street, we either need folks to move out of the street, or if the goal for an event is to close down the street, then we need to go through a process like that, right? And so, we're not necessarily going back and litigating that specific event, but we're trying to take the best lessons for the future. And so we want to be very clear with folks that we are encouraging gatherings. We encourage block parties. We think that the community needs to gather. It's a really positive part about building a community. But these are the steps in the process that we have.
But to be clear, that was a party, not a block party.
I don't have specifics on whether they call it a party or a block party. I understand it was a birthday party, but we do have indications that people were in the street at some point. It doesn't appear the street was blocked off, so that's part of the challenge there.
I have a question on. Sorry.
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
Okay.
Yeah.
On the lateral transfers you were talking about, can you talk more? I know that one of your goals is to diversify the police force. Can you talk about how the lateral transfers can help with that?
Sure. So, like with any application class, we want to make sure to have as broad and diverse a candidate pool as possible, and so that's a goal for our cadet recruitment process, and I think we've been seeing some positive movement both on the size and the diversity, and I think same thing for laterals, and I think we had positive results when it came to both the size and the diversity of that class as well. So I think we're seeing advancements. Would you agree?
Absolutely, yes.
Yep.
How is the city of Akron and the Akron Police Department working to keep illegal guns off the street?
Sure. Yeah, so we have a gun violence detail. We also, part of the Crime Gun Intelligence Center, is announced out of Cleveland. We also have a group co-located with the ATF in Akron. We make that our number one priority. We talk about enforcement activities around gun violence specifically. So those are just a couple steps we're taking. We're also quickly getting things entered into NIBIN and looking for leads and hits to co-locate for cases so we can kind of work on those as well. So that's a significant focus of the mayor's administration and of the police department is around that. So we continue to do that. We also, as the mayor mentioned before in previous ones, about trying to get in front of it, not just responding to crime, but proactively going out and trying to get guns out of people's hands before they become involved in a crime, and making people aware of the impact of gun violence. So those are just a few steps.
How have those efforts played into the investigation into the shooting in June 2nd?
Can you give me more what you mean specifically around that?
Is there any indication that any of the firearms that were used were illegal? And if so, have you deployed any of those resources to track that weapon down?
I think I can.
If you go, I can get part of that.
Yeah, I think, you know, as a result of our partnership with ATF and with BCI, every piece of evidence, every shell casing that we have has been tested to be traced. Every gun has been swabbed for DNA evidence. We're not releasing all the results of that today. That's part of an active investigation. But we remain very closely focused on how data that we pull from evidence in the field can be used with our partners to try to link cases together, to try to provide further leads. Like, for example, you know, if in a case we're not sure about the initial case, but we can link it to another case, we can then see if there are similarities between cases, and that can help crack a case as well. So I would say we're not going to provide further details about this specific case at this time, but every piece of evidence is using those partnerships and that data. You want to add?
No, I think it's great.
How many shootings have there been in Akron since the June 2nd?
I don't have that. I can get that information for you, but I don't have it specifically right now.
Excuse me, question for you, Mayor. 688 applicants you mentioned, are those for police academy, are those for future academies, 688 people?
That's for the next police cadet academy in 2025.
Okay, 688, did you get the number? The other question I have here with regard to recruiting and retention. And
It is 688.
688, wow.
Yep.
So for lateral transfers, are there any disqualifiers for those 80-some applicants, 82 applicants that you mentioned? For example, people who may have had disciplinary problems in other departments?
We have a rigorous process, and backgrounds are a significant part of that process. I'll turn it over to Chief.
No, so we, as the mayor mentioned, we'll gather that information and compare that on a case-by-case basis. There's natural automatic disqualifiers that are on our website as well that preclude anybody from being a police officer. So they probably wouldn't be on the OPATA list if they're already on that one.
On the number of police officers in the department, can you kind of tell us where we stand, and then where will we get up to after this current class graduates? And then the 82 applicants that are transfers, have those all been accepted, or are those being vetted right now?
They're all being, I'll start with the last one. They're all being vetted now. We're currently around 418 active officers. We'll have 44 hitting the street on August 16th.
So where do you want to be? Is that
488 is our current budgeted strength number. Our hope is that the lateral class that we can have in the fall, we can get us pretty close to that number, as close as we possibly can during this year, and then start with another academy class to help us anticipate for retirements for next year, early next year.
And is the thought that with full strength that you could prevent things like this from happening? I mean,
Sure, actually, I mean, it absolutely makes an impact. It helps, it allows us to have additional resources on the street, it allows us to be different community events, to be proactive in that regard as well. So absolutely.
If I can.
Sure.
I think part of what we've seen and what we traditionally see is that during the summer months, staffing is more of a challenge, right? There are more community events, there are vacations and folks out on leave. And so every summer it seems like we are scrambling, and that doesn't mean that we don't provide safety, right? We've, I think, done, and the Akron Police Department has done really remarkable work in providing safety and security for a lot of community events this summer. But it is an additional responsibility. And so that's where, with the lateral class, we hope it will provide more of a buffer and allow us to keep that staffing closer to 488 so that throughout the year we're not faced with these challenges every summer. Doug?
I'm wondering, so at the beginning of the press conference, you're emphasizing the regulations around block parties. Are these new regulations that you're just emphasizing, or new regulations or old regulations you're emphasizing? And then is it safe to assume that the department is going to crack down on people who don't follow these rules more than previously?
Sure. So what we're doing is there are no new regulations. It's the current process. We're trying to raise public awareness around what the current process is. We have a lot of people participate in the process each year. But that's not true for every event. And so the goal here is to spread awareness and generate compliance that way. Certainly, there's no attempt to crack down on folks, but we want to make sure that events are safe. And so, if events are we're going to continue to respond as we have been responding when there are concerns about an event that is getting out of hand. That is going to be part of the process going forward, as it has been. And then from there, we're continuing to review and look at our process and see how we can improve it. Make sure that the communication between departments is as strong as it can be. And then particularly, there have been discussions about making sure that we ensure there's adequate safety at events. Again, that's part of that is working with community organizations, with event organizers, to make sure that they have the resources to do so, whether it's private security or whether it's off-duty officers, or what have you. But that is, we're continually working to strengthen it, but we wanted to start sharing more information about some of these events. Anybody else? Okay, well, I just want to thank everyone for coming, and we will...
Dan DeRosa with 19 News. As we hear the Akron mayor wrap up their safety briefing, it sounds like this is something they're going to do from time to time to update the public on what they're doing to keep Akron a little bit safer. They have Taste of Akron coming up this weekend, trying to reassure the public that they're going to be able to keep that event safe, as they have with other events, the Red, White, and Blue in downtown Akron. And they gave an update to that June 2nd shooting, 20 people injured in that, one dead. And you have countless hours, 2,500 hours of detective work on this, 100 interviews. They have spoken with eyewitnesses that white SUV or light colored SUV that they've put out in the past is in fact the SUV who pulled up and started the shooting. It was the driver of that SUV who started firing, and then other people in the crowd started firing back. We'll have the very latest on this. I believe our reporter Aria Janelle will be on this story today, and she'll have more coming up in our later newscasts. Our 11 o'clock news is ongoing on CW43. Our noon news coming up on Channel 19. If we have anything else that breaks, any other news, it'll be right here on our digital platforms. Until then, I'm Dan DeRosa with 19 News. Have a great day.
19 News is everywhere. Download our CTV apps and follow us on social media @Cleveland 19 News.